Hello, thank you for logging in to view our second lesson. This one is on animals, including humans, and we are looking in particular at the human circulatory system, so how the blood is pumped around the body, and things that can be good for your health and things that can be bad for your health. First off, we're going to have a look at what the circulatory system is. We're going to have a look at how it works and why we call it a double loop system. Then we're going to have a look at some key functions of the heart, the blood vessels and the blood. And we're going to look at how nutrients and water are transported around the body. And finally, what the impact of diet, exercise, drugs and lifestyle can have on your bodily functions. So first off then, we've got the human circulatory system, which is shown in this diagram here. So right at the centre of the system, we have got the heart here, and you'll notice it's got two sides to it, the side that's shaded blue and the side that is shaded red. Now the blue side is actually the right-hand side of your heart, and the red side is the left-hand side, which I know is reversed in this picture. But imagine taking this picture out of the presentation, turning it around and putting it against your own heart. And you'll see that the left-hand side and the right-hand side are now the right way around. So what happens in our circulatory system then is that we start off in our heart here with the blue side, the right-hand side, and you can see the little arrows showing that blood is being pumped to our lungs. From our lungs, it is then being pumped back to the heart, and then from the heart, it follows this circuit here to the body, and in the body the blood will get pumped to each of your individual organs and cells where it is needed. Once it has been used in the body, it will get pumped back to the heart and will start the circuit again. Now the key function of the heart is to transport this blood around the body. Okay? Because blood carries really important substances like oxygen, glucose and nutrients that are needed in your cells, the heart has basically a major function in keeping you alive and keeping you healthy. This system is what we call a double loop, and that is simply because we've got this one loop here going to the lungs and back again, and this other loop here going to the body and back again here. And the heart is split into two right here by a wall of muscle that we call the septum. Now we can have a look at this system in a bit more detail following a single blood cell. And we're going to start off with this blood cell here that is just hidden behind the lungs, and it's just leaving the lungs on its way back to the heart. So we can watch this little blue dot up here as it travels back to the heart, and it has then come into this first area here, the left ventricle, and it's now going through this gap here, which we call a valve, and into the left atrium. So the blood will now get pumped out of the heart through the aorta into the body, and you can see our little blue dot is now here. So let's follow it round into the body, and it's going to go to all the organs that it needs to go to and give them their nutrients and their oxygen that they need. And then once it's been sort of used up, it's going to come back to the heart, and we can follow that blue dot here. It's going to enter the heart through the vena cava, that's a type of vein. And you can see it's now coming down into this area here, the right atrium, through the valve into the right ventricle, and then up through another valve and into the pulmonary artery and back to the lungs. So that is basically the way that the human circulatory system works. So this double loop is happening all the time, and it is basically the way that you stay alive and stay healthy. So your circulatory system then goes all around your body, and it is this whole network of arteries, veins and capillaries that connect up your organs and your individual cells. Now the blood vessels will basically travel around all the cells, okay, and to take these special substances where they need to go. Now the reason that we show it as red and blue blood vessels is because the red vessels are oxygenated blood. So that is blood that has come from the lungs, which have given oxygen from the air into your blood. And that oxygenated blood gets pumped to all the different organs, and the oxygen is removed by those organs and cells. And then the blue blood is what we call deoxygenated blood. So that's blood where the oxygen has been removed already by the cells and it is now on its way back to the heart to then be pumped to the lungs to have oxygen added again. So we've got a few quick questions now to check that you can answer these before we move on. And if you're a bit stuck on them, I would advise that you re-watch these first few minutes and then try them again. So number 1, why is the circulatory system called a double loop? Number 2, which organs give the blood oxygen as part of this double loop? And number 3, what do we call the blood that returns to the heart from the body? So you could pause the video now and check that you can answer them, or if you've got them already, we'll go through the answers now. So why is the circulatory system called a double loop? It's because blood is pumped through each side of the heart separately, and it will first go on a loop to the lungs and back to the heart, and then to the body and back to the heart. Number 2, which organs give the blood oxygen as part of this double loop? That is the lungs, which remember take in oxygen from the air and diffuse it into the blood. And number 3, what do we call the blood that returns to the heart from the body? This is deoxygenated blood, where the organs and cells in the body have used up the oxygen and they are then pumping this deoxygenated blood back to the lungs so it can be oxygenated again. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at are the functions of the heart, the blood vessels and the blood. So we'll look at the heart in a bit more detail first. So let's start with blood being pumped in from the body, and that goes through this special vein called a vena cava. What's going to happen to the blood next is it will get pumped into this right atrium here. And remember, the left and right are reversed when we look at it on the screen. So from the right atrium, it's going to be pumped through this valve here into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, the blood then gets pumped up through another valve and into the pulmonary artery. Now this artery is a really thick blood vessel that will take this blood that's under lots of pressure right to the lungs, where it's going to pick up oxygen and become oxygenated blood. So once we've been to the lungs and it's on its way back to the heart, it's going to enter the heart through the pulmonary vein over here. Next, it's going to go into the left atrium, through another valve and into the left ventricle. And finally, the blood is going to leave the heart on its way to the body through the aorta, which is a type of artery. Now, what these valves do here is they basically stop any blood from flowing the wrong way. So they will open and close to let a certain amount of blood into the ventricles and into the arteries, and they will then snap shut after a certain amount of blood has gone through to stop any of that blood flowing backwards. And when you feel your heart beating, what you're actually feeling are these valves snapping shut and then opening again as they pump the blood through your heart. You don't need to learn these different names, but it's good to know that the blood will come in from the body first and go out to the lungs, and then back from the lungs and into the body. So next we're going to look at the blood vessels, and there are 3 different types of blood vessels in your body, and they all have a specific job and are adapted to do that job well. So the vessels we've got are the arteries, which carry blood away from the heart to the organs, the capillaries, which carry the blood to the cells within the organs, so from the arteries into the capillaries. And then finally, from the capillaries, the blood will flow into the veins, which carries the blood from the organs back to the heart. And we can see how they are adapted here. So when blood is pumped from the heart, it's under lots of pressure. It's going really, really fast, and there's lots of it all racing to get to your different organs. Because of that, the artery needs to have this very thick wall so that it doesn't burst. It's also got some sort of elastic fibres within it. So if there is loads of blood all pushing to get through, it can expand a little bit to make sure that blood goes through and it doesn't burst. The capillaries down here, you'll see, are much, much smaller. They've got a really thin wall made of only one layer of cells. And they've got that thin wall so that the blood and the nutrients in the blood can diffuse from the capillary into the different cells. And finally, we've got the veins, which carry the blood from the organs back to the heart. And you can see compared to the arteries, they're about the same size, but they've got a much smaller wall. And that's because the veins carry blood that is under quite low pressure. It's not in a rush to get back to your heart. Because of that, sometimes blood can flow actually the wrong way. So veins have these special things called valves, which we saw in the heart, which snap shut after the blood has gone through to stop it flowing the wrong way through your body. Now we're going to look in a bit more detail at the blood. Now, blood is made up of 4 different components, and each of those has an important job to do as well. And you can see in this image here, this is actually a really powerful microscope image of someone's actual blood. And you can see there are different substances within it. So we've got here these sort of donut-shaped substances, which are your red blood cells. We've got these substances here, which have got sort of a very rough edge, which are your white blood cells. And we've also got these sort of little bits down here, which are called your platelets. And all of these things are suspended in your blood plasma. So let's look at what each of these things does in a bit more detail. So first up, your red blood cells. Their job is to transport oxygen from the lungs around the body, and it's to transport carbon dioxide back to the lungs where it will be breathed out. They are the most common type of cell in the blood. They make up about 45% of your blood. They don't have a nucleus to make more room for oxygen to carry. And they're also really flexible because they've got to fit down these tiny capillaries so they can bend and sort of wiggle through to make sure they can get where they need to go. Now, you are making 2 to 3 million red blood cells in your bone marrow every single second. And the bone marrow is this kind of spongy bit right in the middle of your bones. And each of these blood cells that you're making will sort of be in your blood for about 120 days, and then it will be recycled by the spleen or by the liver. The next type of blood cell we're going to look at are your white blood cells, which are these ones here that have a very rough edge. Now in this image here, it's actually been stained blue so that we can see the structures better, but normally it would be sort of colourless or white. Now, your white blood cell's job is to fight off infections and to recognise foreign bodies. Now, foreign body is just something that isn't meant to be there, basically. Now, there's only a very small amount of white blood cells in your blood, only about 0.5%. But because they fight off infection, they are really, really important. They can also help you to sort of heal yourself when you are hurt or when you cut yourself. And they too are very flexible to fit through the different capillaries and blood vessels. So we'll look at your platelets next, which are those little bits that we saw at the bottom of the first picture. Now they basically help your blood to clot when you cut yourself, and that means that they sort of stop the blood from flowing and form that hard layer like a scab over a cut. They also make up only about 0.5% of your blood cells, not very many of them at all. And unlike the red blood cells, which are around for about 120 days or 4 months, your platelets are only in your blood for 9 days each before they get removed. Now these are colourless and they don't have a nucleus, and they're just shown red in this image here so that we can see them and their shape. And all platelets are sort of fragments of recycled cells that are then pumped into your blood by your spleen to help clot it. Finally, we've got your blood plasma, and this is a straw-coloured liquid like these images here, and it makes up about 55% of your blood. Now the plasma is mainly water, but it also carries nutrients, hormones, that's things like adrenaline or testosterone, antibodies which fight disease, and large proteins around your body. The plasma can also carry some carbon dioxide which is taken to the lungs for removal. Now you've probably heard before of blood types, and there are actually 8 different blood types that humans can have. These blood types are decided by your red blood cells, which have special markers on their surface which decide what blood type you are. So you could be A, B, AB or O blood type, and each of those can then be positive or negative. So for example, you could be AB positive or you could be O negative. It's really important to know your blood type if you need to have a blood transfusion, and that's where you might have lost some blood due to an accident or to surgery, and you have to have someone else's blood pumped in to make up for the loss. So if your blood type was, for example, A negative, you would need to have A negative from the donor as well. Otherwise, your white blood cells would reject the new blood that has come in and they would try and fight it off, which would then be very, very damaging for your health. So if we summarise this little section on functions then, so the heart's function is to pump blood to the organs, and it allows oxygen to be picked up from your lungs and carbon dioxide dropped off. You've got 3 types of blood vessel: the arteries, which carry blood from the heart to the organs, the capillaries, which carry blood to the individual cells and in the organs, and the veins, which carry the blood from the organs and back to the heart. And then we've said the blood is made up of 4 different parts. You've got your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets, and your plasma. The red blood cells carry oxygen, the white blood cells fight off infection, the platelets clot your blood, and plasma carries the nutrients. And in total there are 8 blood types, which are decided by your red blood cells. Okay, we're now going to have a look at how exactly nutrients and water are transported in your blood. So nutrients, and by that I mean things like sugar, proteins or vitamins, are all carried in the blood plasma and therefore go all around your body as the blood gets pumped around. So they're needed in your cells and they have to get across the cell membrane from the blood to get into them. Now the way that the nutrients do this is that they diffuse across the cell membrane, which is shown in this image here. So if you imagine all these little particles here are different nutrients, so maybe little vitamin molecules or sugar molecules, and they are going to basically diffuse across this membrane here into the cell. Now diffusion happens when things move from where there are lots of them, so where they're in high concentration, to where there are fewer of them, where they're in low concentration. And generally, nutrients are in high concentration in your blood and low concentration in your cell. So they want to move across that barrier and get into your cell. Now water moves in a very similar way, so it's also carried in the blood as part of the plasma, and instead of diffusion it moves via this thing called osmosis. So what we've got in this beaker here is something called a semi-permeable membrane, which means it only allows certain things through, and in this case it's only letting water through. Now we've got the same amount of water on either side here, but we've got more sugar particles on this side. So what the water actually does is it moves from where it is in a concentrated solution to where it is in a dilute solution. So that is the same as the nutrients. And we've got this special membrane that only allows water through in osmosis. Okay, on to our final part of this lesson then, which is all about exercise, diet and health. So we've all been told that exercise and a healthy diet is really good for you, but why is that? Exercise keeps your circulatory system healthy. If you think about when you exercise, maybe you've gone on a really long run or you've been playing football for an hour or something and you feel your heart starting to beat really, really fast. And that's actually good for your heart because your heart is made up of muscle. And as your heart beats faster, the muscles sort of get stronger and it gets used to beating that fast. Now when we exercise, you need your heart to beat faster because you need more blood pumped to your muscles. And remember, the blood is carrying oxygen, which is an essential ingredient in making energy. If you exercise as well, your muscles will become stronger too. The more you exercise, the more muscle cells are actually made because you're using them frequently. So it's really, really good for your heart and your muscles. Now, it's also important to have a healthy and varied diet, and that's because there are different nutrients in different foods that you need to do specific jobs in your body. So some examples of things that you need are carbohydrates, which you might get from bread and pasta. They're essential for giving you energy. Proteins, which you might get from meat or fish, which help you to grow and repair your cells. And fats, which also come from dairy products and some sugary treats, which help to insulate your body. You also need fibre, which might come from whole grains or your cereal, which helps your digestive system to keep running smoothly. And you need vitamins and minerals, which help your bones stay strong, help to heal your wounds, and help to fight off infection. Now, if you are deficient in any of these nutrients, and that basically means you're not getting enough of them, you can actually get what we call a deficiency disease. Now, some really bad example might be rickets, where your bones don't form properly, or scurvy, which is where you haven't had enough vitamin C, which comes from oranges and other citrus fruits, and that can make you really ill. So it's really important that you are getting some of all of these different nutrients every day, and also not too much of the fat or protein. A person's intake of drugs and alcohol can also really negatively affect their health. Now I've got 6 statements here. Have a look at them, have a read through, and think which ones are true and which ones are myths. So we've got natural drugs are safer than man-made ones. Taking a drug just once means you can't get addicted. It is dangerous to drink alcohol more than once a week. Doctors will only prescribe you safe drugs that you can't become addicted to. Drugs make you feel happy and give you lots of energy. And cigarettes and alcohol are legal, so they can't be harmful. So have a think, maybe pause the video now and decide which statements do you think are true and which are myths. Okay, would it surprise you to know that actually all 6 of these statements are myths? So natural drugs can actually be really dangerous to your body and are often far more dangerous than some man-made prescription drugs. Taking a drug just once means you can't get addicted is also not true. There are some really dangerous drugs which can affect your body really, really badly from the first time that you take them. It's dangerous to drink alcohol more than once a week is also not true. As long as you are not drinking too much each time, you can drink more than once a week without it negatively affecting your health, obviously if you're over 18 only. Doctors will prescribe you safe drugs that you can't become addicted to is unfortunately also not true. Sometimes doctors will need to prescribe you some strong drugs, maybe to deal with pain, that you can become addicted to over time if you take them for long enough. Drugs make you feel happy and give you lots of energy. Some of them will, but there are a lot more drugs that will make you feel depressed or worried or concerned about things. And finally, cigarettes and alcohol are legal, so they can't be harmful. Also not true. So cigarettes can really badly damage your lungs and your respiratory system, and alcohol can damage your liver amongst various other things. So looking at drugs a bit more closely. So drugs are simply chemicals that change the way the body works. Some of them are really helpful to your body when you take them in the right amount. For example, if you had a headache and needed some paracetamol, that's helpful. It's allowing you to get on with your day. While a lot more are actually harmful, no matter how much you take. So we've got 4 different types of drugs: stimulants, depressants, anesthetics, and hallucinogens. So have a think, which one would you match to which description on the right? Pause the video now and see if you can work it out. Okay, so if we start with a stimulant. So a stimulant is associated with feelings of extreme well-being and an increase in your brain activity. So stimulants include caffeine, which is in coffee, and illegal drugs like cocaine. Now, a depressant is a drug that slows the brain down. It can help you to relieve your anxiety if you are an anxious person. So common drugs like this include alcohol, which we know is legal, and cannabis, which is illegal. Then we've got anesthetics. Now, opiates and opioid drugs are examples of anesthetics, and they provide pain relief by blocking your nerve impulses. So if you were having some surgery in hospital, you might be given an anesthetic to help to relieve the pain, but they can also cause euphoria, which is when you're really, really happy for no real reason, sedation, which is where you sort of feel very tired or if you're put to sleep during an operation, and can sometimes induce a coma. So heroin and morphine are both examples of anesthetics, but they are both illegal ones unless your morphine has been prescribed by a doctor. Finally, we've got hallucinogens. So these change the way a person perceives reality, so they alter what you feel, see, and hear. And common drugs like this include cannabis, LSD, and ecstasy, all of which are illegal. The last thing we're going to look at then are how cigarettes and alcohol can negatively affect your health. So cigarettes can really damage your lungs very badly, and you can see in this image here, these are a normal person's lungs. They're very bright pink, they look quite healthy, and these are a smoker's lungs. You can see that they are stained black, and that is by the chemicals that are in cigarettes. Smoking can also make you more prone to illnesses, and it can decrease the amount of oxygen your blood can carry in your circulatory system. They can also be really, really addictive, and it's actually a very expensive habit to have. Now, drinking excess alcohol can give you heart disease, strokes, and liver disease, but most people will be able to drink a moderate amount of alcohol and not really feel any negative effects. But if you're drinking a lot of alcohol for a long time, it can be very, very addictive and can cause severe liver problems like this shown here. So this is a healthy liver at the top, and this is a liver caused by alcohol addiction at the bottom. Okay, so we have looked at today the human circulatory system, the functions of the heart, the blood vessels and the blood, how nutrients and water are transported around the body, and the impact of diet, exercise, drugs and lifestyle on your body functions. Now again, we're going to have a 20-point quiz on this lesson, which you will do in class with your teacher. And I just wanted to say that I've seen some really excellent scores from the previous quiz, so I'm expecting lots of excellent ones again from this. Thank you for watching and good luck in your quiz.